Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Bayonne Today. When we think about Bayonne, we think about what made Bayonne what it is today. I mean, that's not a pun on our topic or our name of the show, but Bayonne is made up of the many, many people who've crossed their paths, walked through here, and today's guest is a person who we're going to talk about the history of Bayonne because he's lived through it for 92 years. When I was mayor and people would ask me about the quality stores leaving Broadway, this store has been around since I was born. And it was a neighbor of mine from 46th Street. And if anything, this store has expanded over the many years to do many other lines. Certainly it started with this gentleman's father, and now it's being run by his sons. I want to introduce you, person who's done so much for our community, who probably needs no introduction to most of you, Al Resnick. Al, welcome to our show. Al, 92 years, you've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, a lot of changes.
Tell me about your boyhood, stuff that I would have never have seen.
I remember when I was a child, you know, you talk about the 20th century, and you think the 20th century, a modern century. But when I was a child, I remember in the wintertime grabbing my clothes, going into the kitchen, closing the door, and standing by. The only heat in the apartment was the coal stove, and stand there and got dressed right by the coal stove, while one of my parents would be shaking the ashes and shoveling out the ashes, shoveling into a pan, not sanitary the way we live today.
Yeah, but you used the ashes instead of sand when you had snow on your car, didn't you?
Used the ashes
for traction.
And the living, you had an ice box. You know, there are things that we sold in the store that you don't even know about today. You had an ice box. Under the ice box, there was a pan to catch the drippings. We sold those pans. Also, there was a box, a galvanized box about 2.5 feet wide, a foot and a half tall, with sliding doors on the front, and they was fastened outside the window, so you would put your stuff in there and use the cold weather to chill your milk and cold. And your eggs. See, food, even with ice, didn't keep like refrigeration does today. It was good for a couple days, and you ate it or tossed it. You know. That's how.
One of the things that always admired me about Al. Now, Al and I have been in Rotary when we had a membership drive. 25 plus years ago,
yeah.
and Rotary was looking for members, and we were going through a list. I said, Al, I remember Al since I was a kid. Well, what I thought was really phenomenal is knowing Al in many years, him on his computer. I mean, when we talked about this earlier before the show, you've been using computers for a long, long time.
A long time already.
And it's remarkable that anybody who thinks they're too old for anything, you just take a look at Al, and he's got technology that he never even dreamed of, right, Al?
Well, yeah, but on the other hand, when you think you know a lot, when I run into trouble, I got to get a hold of my grandchildren to straighten the things out.
Nothing wrong with that. That's why you had them, right, Al? So you have, well, let's go back to the history of the store. The store was not on 46th Street originally, right?
No, my father had a store downtown. It was housewares mostly. And then in 1918, he bought this store. It was a hardware store. The owner, his name was J.E. Jones, and he was a fire chief for the volunteer fire department. And he bought the store. Then I was a year and a half old when we moved there. I was 1918.
And you lived upstairs?
I lived upstairs, yeah.
So you've been living there for almost your entire life?
Almost my entire life, except that 4 or 5 years, my first 4 or 5 years of marriage. And then my father moved out and I moved in.
And you and Fran were married how many years?
68 years.
68 years.
Yeah.
She was a great person, and at least she got me to quit smoking. I keep telling you that.
Yeah, well, she got a lot of people quit smoking.
Yeah.
She was always
very persistent.
Always persistent, talking to people, and once in a while, someone would walk into the store and tell her that he quit smoking. You know?
as I did too, to tell her, and she was beaming when I told her. She was absolutely beaming.
Going to school. First of all, the first school I went to was number 3 school, not what's number 3 school today. Number 3 school at that time was a building on Broadway between 49th and 50th Street. There's a housing project there now.
Okay.
They use a number 3 now on the school.
Was it a wooden school?
What?
Was it wooden school or brick?
It was a brick school.
Brick school?
Yeah. The school was till the 6th grade. And then I got transferred to Horace Mann School. That was 9 to 12. High school was only 3 years. High school was 3 years because even though it was only 3 years, not 4, there were so many kids in that school that we had double sessions, morning sessions and afternoon sessions, like it was 2 schools. There was a morning school, afternoon school, and the afternoon schools ended up, like in the winter time, it was almost dark before they get out of school.
Now, is that at the same site that Horace Mann is today on 38th Street?
Horace Mann was there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and teachers, I wasn't there then, but teachers talked about picnicking in the woods behind the school, but there was buildings there by the time I got there.
Oh, so that was only in the 20s. What was the Depression like?
The depression wasn't very great. We think we got a depression now, but that was a depression. When 1929 came, headlines were people jumping off the roofs. You know, we have social programs now that people don't starve to death. You know.
There was no Social Security?
There was nothing, not till Roosevelt started making, giving people jobs. They got the WPA, they got programs for young people, all kinds of programs.
What was, well, if you lived through that, you were a teenager during those years with WPA. What were some of the projects you remember that happened in Bayonne through the WPA?
Well, WPA, first of all, there was, I remember Broadway being paved concrete.
Paved in concrete?
It was paved in concrete, yeah.
What was it before that, Al? Was it brick or paving block or anything like that, do you remember?
No, there was some side streets, brick. 48th Street was brick, 44th Street was
Plank Road
brick.
wasn't Plank Road after it had planks and went to brick, right? Plank Road on
yeah, Plank Road, yeah. They were brick. Then they blacktopped it later, and then Broadway didn't get blacktop for quite a number of years after that. What we recently had on Broadway was my third view of Broadway getting paved.